Using just spheres in Blender, you can easily create a rocket like this. You can duplicate the sphere multiple times and overlay it, color it different, and get something extremely close to this result without any other shapes. So let's dive into that. First, I'm going to delete this cube, and then I'm going to add in an icosphere. This icosphere, I'm going to apply what's called a modifier just to make it a little bit smoother before I start copying and pasting it, and then I'm going to give it smooth shading. Now every time I copy and paste this object will also copy with those features. And finally, I'm going to add a material to this, so later I can color it easier just by duplicating the material. Alright, so now I'm going to first stretch this out and create the body of the rocket ship. Now I'm going to duplicate this again and create a window. I'm going to shrink this down a little, and there we go. Alright, now I'm going to flatten that. I'm going to create a frame around this window. I'm going to duplicate the window, the cockpit window, scale it up just a little bit, and then flatten it. And we'll kind of create a donut shape around the window between the body and the cockpit window there. Now, I'm going to take the body again, and I'm going to duplicate this. Remember, these are all just icospheres. I'm going to rotate this about 45 degrees, shrink it down, kind of line it up with the body of the rocket, and then I'm going to flatten it. Now you'll notice I have to keep jumping around. We're working in 3 dimensions, so you have to be able to flip around and make sure your objects are stacked on top of each other correctly. That's something you'll get used to really quickly working in Blender. Now I'm going to select both of the wings, duplicate them, and move them down to the back. Right now it kind of looks like some sort of fish, but if I scale this down, that looks a lot better. I can duplicate this and rotate it as I duplicate it, and it'll create a really cool effect. Feel free to play with the spacing of these. So I'm going to duplicate this, rotate it, select the other ones, duplicate it again, rotate those, and now that creates a pretty cool effect on the back. Let's create a quick antenna. I'm going to duplicate the body, shrink this down, stretch it out a little bit, duplicate it again. Oops. There's always undo if you make a mistake. I'm going to squish this down, scale this up, and place this on the front. Now I'm going to duplicate this again, this time squishing it pretty flat and moving it behind the biggest part of the antenna. And then I'm going to do that a few times, but I'm going to scale it up each time and just squish it flatter to kind of keep them the same thickness. I think that looks a little bit cooler. And now, as we're doing this, just remember we only start with a single sphere, right? And so far we already have this. So even without learning a lot of Blender, it's really easy to create a really cool rocket ship. Now, one thing I personally think is really fun to do is add in little details. I'm not going to go overboard because I just want to show you how quick you can do this. But just using spheres, once again, around the frame where the window is, we can actually copy and paste this and just kind of go around. You can go and make sure it's like exactly where you want it by going around the object. But again, I don't want to spend too much time there. But the longer you spend, the better the quality of your rocket ship in the end. Now what I'm going to do is begin to add materials. So that first material we added, we can give this the main color for the rocket. Purple's my favorite color, so I'm going to go with purple. I'm going to make it pretty metallic and give it a little bit more shine, so it's almost reflective. Now that we have this base, we can click on the other objects. I can clone or duplicate the materials, and once I do that, I can change them independent of the other ones. So that allows me to really quickly, add a lot of color and detail and depth into this. And the cool thing about Blender, you can actually drag and drop materials. So instead of adding this to everything over and over again, you're in a position where you can just drag and drop once you set up the main materials you like, and you can get a really cool result super fast. So, though it's not exactly like the first example I showed you, it's very close, very similar, only using a sphere, and I think this is only using 3 materials total. So in Blender, that's how you can create a rocket with one shape in just a few minutes.